I moved 2 years ago at 23 from Germany to Nairobi in Kenya. Everything is great so far here, but it came with a lot of ups and downs. And let me tell you about one of the biggest challenges I had faced in the last 2 years. So when I came the first time to Kenya, first off, I faced quite a few challenges. The first thing I was facing was that I didn't have the work permit, the business permit to pursue the things I wanted to pursue here in the country because it took much longer than expected. So in the end of the day, I had to wait another 4 months after arriving here to officially get started with my business and officially being able to do things here on the ground. The second problem I had in this time was that I came, of course, with the investment money you need for the business permit, but on the other hand, I didn't come with many savings on the other hand, besides the investment money. Then the problem is that I couldn't touch the investment money because I was really dedicated to do certain kinds of investments here. So during this time, I was struggling a little bit with sustaining myself because I had to get the money from somewhere else. So I started freelancing in this time, tried to make a couple of dollars and euros here and there just to sustain myself until everything finally starts running. But the thing is, it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. So before I came, in my mind, it looked like this. I will touch the Kenyan ground, I will evaluate the ideas I had brought with me, I start working on them, and I will profit immediately. But this was absolutely not the case. It took me quite a long time to actually start making some money from the business. But the problem was I still had to sustain myself without getting any money from the business. Because of that mindset, when I touched base here in Kenya, I brought very little pocket money with me that could sustain myself because I was like, don't worry, everything will be happening quickly. So I think if I remember correctly, I came with only around 1,800 euros in my pocket to sustain myself for the first couple of months. And of course I knew it wasn't enough, and I had the doubts in my mind. I was like, is this the right thing to do right now, or how can I get some money on the side until I was working on my business? But I just trusted myself that everything will be okay and everything will be working out. So I tried to get some gigs here and there while freelancing, while trying to get all the documents ready here in Kenya. During this time, I had quite a few times the problem in my head that I was like, oh man, I will run out of money quite quickly if everything continues like the way it continued. But of course I didn't give up, and I acquired my first few freelance clients, and they helped me to sustain myself for another 3 to 4 months in this time. So I had another 3 to 4 months time in my head to actually focus on getting all the documents ready. I had time to finally start and getting the business ready. But eventually, because the process I mentioned in the beginning, the process took another 4 months to get all my documents ready, I was close to running out of money again. And I'm just saying this because I hit my lowest points, and this even happened twice where I only had, I think it was around 200 US dollars in my pockets, and where I was like, what am I going to do now about this? Because I wasn't able in this time to get any more freelance clients, because all these gigs I had, they ran out. We finished them and finalized them, and the business was still not making anything because we were still waiting for documents. And even after we got all the documents ready, it takes time just to get off the ground and just to start the things you want to start and to actually start making some little profits here and there. So why am I telling you this? I'm just telling you this because I heard the story quite a few times that people come here and think everything will be very, very much easy and they can just start profiting from day number one when arriving here in Kenya with their business. But things always look very different. I needed a lot of preparation. I needed a lot of time to understand the local customs. I needed time to deep dive into the things I wanted to and actually evaluate which one was making sense, because I had so many ideas in my head when I came here first, and I had to figure out which one would it be eventually in the end of the day. So I'm just telling you this because I made this mistake. I wasn't ready for it, and I had two of the lowest points in my life where I was really struggling, where I was really like, I think it might be time to go home again, because I didn't know how I could sustain myself in this time. I was new to everything. I was just 23, as mentioned. It was not easy for me to handle all these thoughts, handle all these doubts, and just push through, And in this time, what really helped me was having a lot of conversations with some people here and there, and I just didn't give up myself. I was like, okay, let me just work 10 times harder now, invest 10 times more time now. So I was working more and trying to find my first few clients, trying to get more freelance gigs, trying to connect with more people, even when my bank account was hitting very, very low numbers, and I was really not sure of what my next step would be if I eventually run out of money, because I also had to pay rent the next month. And when I think back to this time now, it really felt like the worst thing that happened to me in my life, at least to this point, because I was ready to take over everything. People were expecting things from me. I was expecting things from myself even. And I was just not performing the way I thought I would perform right from the beginning. When I think of all these situations I had now in this time, I was even thinking if I should get a coffee now or not. I was thinking if I get this newspaper or not. I was reading in the beginning quite a few newspapers just to get information about the local market, about local news, about movements here in Kenya. So I was even thinking of these, what usually is something smaller to me was already very big in this time. But luckily I also met quite a few good people during this time, during my low times, that I had conversations with that had already much more experience than me. Because I always like to talk to people who are more experienced than me, who are like 2-3 times older than me, who have more business experience, more life experience, and just saw a lot of things that I didn't see in my life yet. Luckily, I was ready to get this insight, and I was asking some business owners that I met while being outside and just talking to strangers. I asked them, hey, you have much more life experience than I do, you have more business experience than I do. Do you know this case and what would you recommend me? And some of them just recommended me just to push through because things will always be hard. I met one business owner who was in business for 10 or 12 years at this point. I'm not really sure right now. And she told me that all these situations and doubts still come towards her, even if she's making good money. She has a big restaurant that's going quite well. She has other investments here and there, so she can't complain about the money at this point. But what I saw from this situation, when she told me it's normal for her up to today even, that she sees and struggles sometimes here and there with things because new challenges come up, new things come up. Something I learned from this was that I just need to push through and just keep going and not thinking too much about what if. Because the what ifs always cost me a lot of time, and they costed me the time I didn't have in this time frame. So the message I'm trying to send here now is that even if you see me now doing much better than before, if I tell you about all the good things here in Kenya, because I can tell you about how great life is here, I can tell you about how many great opportunities Kenya offers and Nairobi here offers, where I am right now. I can tell you how beautiful the nature here is. But in the end of the day, when you come with the purpose of doing business here, all these things matter, of course, but you also need to see that taking off with the business will take eventually a lot of time until you understand everything you need to know here on the market, until you make your first few experiences here on the market, and that you are just ready for it. Because I had no one to warn me about this. I was learning all these things later on by myself, and like by having a lot of conversations with more experienced people than me. And eventually I made it possible to start to sustain myself again and like acquire my first few clients here and there, and then started growing and growing and growing from there on. This is not just monetary, I also grew a lot like mentally, with the vision I have, with the ideas I have, with basically everything. But this is definitely a process that will take you some time to get to this point. I'm not the only case. Just to give you more examples that you understand that this happens quite a few times, that quite a few people come here, think they will own everything they do quite quickly and will start profiting immediately. But they also realized that this was not the case. They spent all the money, they invested the money, and they had to go back before even starting to make any kind of profits, any kind of revenues. Because they weren't really deep into the culture, they weren't really deep into the market, they didn't understand how things work here on the ground, what you need to do. That things sometimes are here different. Just because we are from the West, sometimes we expect that we will take off immediately because we think the African continent, and in this case here Kenya, is just something quite easy because it's not as developed as we know it from the West. But it's not the case. Kenya is very developed. Things here work just very differently than the things we know already from the Western countries. If we are from the States, if you're from the UK, if you're from Germany, wherever you're from, we need to understand, and you need to understand in this case, the thing I've learned, and that is that things will take time. Things will not always be perfect. And I met quite a few people struggling here as well, building their business. One of them even just went back to Germany that I met after starting like multiple different businesses and trying to get it off the ground here. I just wanted to share as well the message that things are not easy, that I also had my struggles, even when I talk now a lot about the good sides of moving here, of doing business here, of doing things here on the ground. But you need to be ready for it. So let me just ask you for one last favor. So now I want you to put down in the comments below if you are planning to move to an African continent and where you're watching from right now. In case you have any questions about the process of moving, in case of you have any questions of how to do business here on different kinds of countries, just drop them in the comments down below, and I think we can solve them together as a community. All of us together, if you put your questions down below, we have enough people who have experience. They can answer these questions, and if I have the knowledge about it, I will make a video for it. Otherwise, I will acquire the knowledge and make a video for it afterwards. So thank you so much for watching and following my journey, and I see you in the next video.